thank you very much for joining us. We're really excited about this next session. My name is Alex Holmes, and I'm delighted to be the moderator for this session. And we called this session Shaping, Not Shaking, because children's lives and their minds, they're constantly in a state of formation, and we know that stories can either ground them, guide them, give them strength, or it can add to the noise and the anxiety of the world that they're growing up in. And today we're here to talk about how we ensure it's the former. I've got a brilliant panel. I'm not used to, I don't really like doing the introductions, but I felt like actually we need to do some introductions here because we've got some amazing experience, amazing talent on the panel. So I'm going to ask each of them to briefly introduce themselves and share your definition of resilience. Lucy, let's start with you.
Hi, I'm Lucy Murphy, and I'm the Director of Kids Content at Sky. And I guess my definition of resilience would depend, I think it changes according to when we talk about, the context in which we use that word. When I was a child, it was, oh, darling, but just get on with it. I think resilience is now a little bit fluffier than my childhood understanding of it was. So resilience, I would say, is the ability to sort of not only overcome life's obstacles, but understand more about them and have tools and strategies with which to tackle them.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. Dr. Marta?
Hi, I'm Dr. Marta. I'm a clinical psychologist. I have worked with children and families for over 20 years. And I've worked with CBeebies and Channel 4 and all sorts of media. Resilience, to me, the way I think about it is a bit like a ball. So if you imagine different balls and you throw them, bouncy balls come back, and even if you chuck them in mud, you can wash them and they're still there. They still kind of have got through. If you bounce a glass ball, it shatters. So resilience is like a bouncy ball, and it's about withstanding those challenges. But it's not about toughening up. So bouncy balls are quite squidgy, right? They're not hard. And I think that's really important for me as a psychologist, because I think in lay terms, lots of people think resilience means being tough and just getting on with it, but it doesn't. It's about actually going through an experience and moving through it rather than avoiding it or just blocking it.
Nice. Hopefully you all caught that bouncy ball, because there's lots more on your Instagram actually as well, that sort of bite-sized nugget. So really enjoyed that. Rebecca, what about you?
Hi, I'm Rebecca Clark. I'm the founder of Happy Marlowe Studios, and we focus on creating conscious content to support young children. What resilience means to me, kind of similar to what Marta was saying, it's about kind of a growth mindset and really finding ways as adults to nurture and support children when they go through these difficulties and help them to become curious about that, and what are we learning about ourselves and what are we learning about the world in the process. And I think resilience can be a bit of a dangerous word, because there can be a bit of a shorthand. Well, the kids are just resilient, aren't they? They'll get over it. They can deal with stuff because they're resilient. But I think that's missing out the piece that we actually need to nurture that and help and guide them through those situations as and when they arise.
Brilliant. And Steph, what about you? What's your perspective on this?
So hi, I'm Stefano, a 19-year-old mental health campaigner. I've been campaigning since I was about 15. I've been on a number of different projects, either with Young Minds, My Life, My Say, and for the past 2 years I've been working at Orly Health, which is a startup working to build calm moments through play for 7 to 13-year-olds. And for resilience, I think that for me it's really about building those moments where children can have the intention, especially in childhood and this very formative years, of having the intention to want to overcome those challenges. I think it's the first thing that we need to establish in a child's life. And then it's about how do we give them the support around them to do so. So what is it that they want to do that thing, but then everything around it, or the whole ecosystem built around them to support them.
Nice. Well, I'm going to take all the panel back to school and childhood now. For some of you, that wasn't such a long time ago. And I want to know a little bit more about, what were the stories or perhaps the media or the shows that helped you feel a bit more resilient as a child? Were there any standout kind of pieces of content that you felt helped support you to be resilient and you learned that from? Anyone want to go first with that? Steph?
just preempting what the rest of the panel is going to go, I'm going to go slightly different, and I'm going to think about what Frank was talking about yesterday at the keynote, and it's really this thing about those stories which your parents tell you, and it's not necessarily everything which we see around us, but it's what has been told, what's been shared with us by our parents, or that bedtime story which your mum always went back to, or your dad, if you were fortunate enough to have everyone there, or whoever was in your life there, your siblings, a friend maybe, even a teacher. What story which was probably fictional, we probably all knew that it was fictional to some extent, but what was there to tell you, yeah, this is cool, I like that, that brings me warmth almost, and brings me comfort, because that's what everyone needs as a child, it's comfort.
That's brilliant. Can you remember the particular story that?
There was one about a dog, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to remember. It was one which my mum would always make up, and she'd say in Italian, which
Yes, okay.
now, so both, I'm bilingual. I was born in Italy, moved here straight away. So grew up with two very different cultures all at once, which was really nice. And the bedtime stories were in Italian sort of thing, but then I'd go to school and learn stories in English. So this really interesting mix, and TV I'd watch in English because parents wanted me to make sure that I knew English properly, which, for all good reasons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, we might come back to that sort of animal use a little bit later. Actually, there. Rebecca, what about you?
Yeah, I had a little trip down memory lane back to the 80s when I was thinking about this question this morning. And what really stuck out for me was actually story time at school. And I don't know, it would have been at infants or juniors, and we were reading Charlotte's Web, or the teacher was reading Charlotte's Web to us. And I just think that's such a beautiful story, and I would no way have known that it had themes of resilience at the time. But as you look back and you think about the challenges that Wilbur went through, the kind of creativity and intelligence that Charlotte used in her web to try and kind of protect him, and handling themes like grief at the end when Charlotte dies as well. So I think it's a really powerful story that's stood the test of time and is still impacting children today.
Fantastic. Dr. Marta?
I don't know if anyone's ever seen this, but I was really into David the Gnome.
Hands up. Anyone know David the Gnome?
Yay!
Okay,
Oh, yay! You guys are my people.
You're going to have to tell us more about
So
it.
I'm also kind of bilingual, trilingual, and David the Gnome was on TV in Spanish, and so that's what I watched when I was little. And I think he was a bit more grown up than I was, and I've never, ever forgotten the last scene. I mean, there's lots of scenes I remember, but for me, the last scene is about when they die, and they turn into these beautiful almond trees. Honestly, if you haven't seen it, it's like the most poignant...
Spoiler.
Sorry, did I ruin it?
Yeah.
Sorry.
At least you're resilient enough now to watch that.
Exactly. And I just remember thinking, you know, there's like a continuation, and it's not just about death. He's a vet, by the way. That's how I think of him. You know, he goes around rescuing animals in the woods and like helping them out. So there's tons of problem solving. There's lots of curiosity. Like even animals, when they get hurt, they get scared, and so they might attack. But he's always really gentle and calm. There's so many tools in that show, actually, about how to respond to fear, how to respond to pain, how to find creative ways of, you know, protecting and supporting the animals in his case. And they also live till they're like 500 or something. And I remember thinking, oh, maybe I'll find a gnome in the woods one day. But really, I think for me, that story is interesting because I ended up being a clinical psychologist, and a lot of what I did in the NHS was working with children who were sick. And I often thought about David. So these stories kind of stick with us when we revisit them. But it is about how do you support kind of pain or challenge in a way that soothes and restores, but also sometimes makes them stronger. And, you know, I think those stories can be really valuable, even if you're not thinking that it is about resilience. That is kind of what the core is about.
Nice. Thank you, Lucy.
I remember so vividly a very beautiful adaptation of A Secret Garden that the BBC did, which got me kicked out of Brownies because I used to run home early to watch it. And that, it has such powerful themes, and it was so shocking. I'm one of 4 girls, so actually a lot of my experience of watching and reading was not just about that, singular process, but the discussion that I would have with my siblings afterwards. And that one we all discussed a lot. So I think as sort of media practitioners, that's actually something that really stays with me of how do we create things that you don't necessarily need. Some people don't have siblings, some people don't have anyone to talk about what they watch or read. So how do we create things that can do that work without it needing to be reinforced beyond the programme or book?
Absolutely. I like that. And when I was thinking about this question, I was thinking probably the animals of Farthing Woods. I mean, if you could get through an episode of that. And then I was thinking of Fireman Sam, because I was a little bit naughty at school, and I so identified with Norman Price. And I liked how, he was forgiven each episode, and thought, it kind of helped me think about that label not sticking. But why is storytelling such a powerful tool, perhaps in helping children to develop that resilience, that emotionally and, perhaps resilient emotionally, socially and psychologically? Dr. Martin, should we start with you? What would you say is the reason why it's so effective?
So one of the reasons why it's so effective is because we all live experiences like the world, but the way that we retell them, recall them, remember them is through stories. Storytelling is as old as time. Like, that's what we do as humans, and that's how we create meaning, to the point where we even have therapeutic models based on storytelling, like narrative therapy, which is something that I do a lot with children. And it's a great way of kind of protecting children from trauma. So if they've had really big experiences, life events that happen, being able to have a full story with not just the hard stuff, but the good stuff too, and who helped them and what soothed them and where were they safe, will help them move through that story. So it becomes an experience with a slightly different meaning. It moves away from just the fear, and it brings in the whole perspective. So storytelling is incredibly powerful. And I think it really shapes our world. It shapes the meaning that we attribute to life. And for children, it is through stories that they make sense of themselves in terms of their identity, in terms of emotion. We actually co-create emotion. So the way that you feel anything, anger or sadness or fear, is different to how I feel it. And the way that we've created that meaning for ourselves is from the stories we've lived in our family. For example, who's scared of spiders? Few people, lots of people. It's okay, it's really common. But that fear is not actually inbuilt in us. That fear is learned. You probably growing up watched adults around you freak out around spiders, or other children, because the stories that we hold on to are multifaceted. And those of you who are not scared of spiders probably had an adult, like my husband, who just goes up to the spiders and goes, "It's okay, we'll pick it up and we'll put it outside on a little plant." And he shows my daughters, I've got a 2-year-old and a 6-year-old, and they are fascinated by spiders. And my little one just points at them and goes, "Hello," and like waves at them. She's not scared at all, but I grew up being scared of them, and he's taught me to be calm. So I used to be, and I'm a little bit less.
Yet?
No, I'm not picking them up, but I will say hello to them and be like, "Aren't they lovely?" When Daddy comes, he'll put it outside. At least I don't stamp on them anymore. So that's why stories are so powerful, and it's really important that we think about the fact that we are part of children's stories, and we're creating stories alongside them every single day.
And just building on that, does the panel think there are any particular elements or ingredients that make perhaps impactful storytelling when it comes to developing resilience? What do we know works well?
I think characters are a really important piece of that puzzle. We know from some of the research we've done that young children in particular learn through external characters and being able to almost project some of the scary things that they're feeling onto the third-party characters, and being able to kind of discuss and explore things that are going on when it's not about them, but it's about Amy the owl or whatever it might be. And even at home with my own 6-year-old, when she was a bit younger, I would talk to her through the rabbit, this little cuddly toy.
Yes.
And that was a really good way for her to, she wasn't speaking to Mummy directly, she was speaking to Rabbit. There's something curious, Martin might know more about the science of that, but I found that really interesting, that it's this separation through characters that feels safe and familiar that just kind of opens up opportunities for conversation and learning and growth.
children blur fantasy and reality until the age of 8. You know, everything they see on a screen, the stories you read to them, the stories you tell them, they're real. There is no difference between, you know, this is a chair and it's real, and, oh, you know, that's Bluey on a screen. No, that Bluey, like, they're real. That's why going to Disneyland or seeing, you know, the people who wear, like, cartoons, they're real to kids. Like, that's actual Bluey. You know, there's no differentiation. So that's why it's really helpful to use, like, puppets. I tend to use them with, like, little ones, because they will open up about stories that they might not share with you because they recognize you as an adult and a parent or whoever it is. But if you're using a puppet, they'll recognize the puppet as something they can interact with. That isn't you. It's separate. So, yes, that kind of offers space.
And Lucy, you feel that as well? I mean, I was fascinated by that idea of actually a lot of the stories that we see are centred around sort of animals. And are you more likely to commission, or what's the sort of...
I think for us at Sky Kids, it's really important to have a range and know that children will respond to, you know, some kids love drama and some kids love animation and factual. You know, there's the brilliant thing about kids is you have every genre within kids. So it's sort of how can we create meaningful content that allows children to experience quite difficult things, actually, at times, whether that's in a news programme and you're talking about riots, or whether it's in a drama and you're talking about why you lost the plot when your friend won at football and you didn't. So it's, you know, we treat it differently according to what it is. But I've got a little clip reel, actually, if you could show it.
Take deep breaths in through your nose and then push out through your mouth with a dragon roar. Roar!
Why?
Well, because it might help you get rid of some of that anger. Come on.
Roar!
Now keep doing it until you feel your anger getting a bit less.
Roar! I definitely don't feel as angry as I did.
Brilliant.
Food at a party might be a bit different to how you eat at home.
What do you want, Teddy? We've got delicious carrot sticks. But I have carrots in circles. Mouth-watering chicken bites? Not chicken. The very finest party rings. But the colours are touching.
Don't worry, Eddie. Your mum will have brought some food you like just in case. But hang on, look!
Triangle cheese sandwiches. We made them specially. Enjoy!
They laugh at me and they point at me and they stare at me, and I really don't like that.
Are disabled children getting the support they need?
School is stressful.
And do they feel like they're treated equally?
It makes me feel pretty angry.
In our family, we've got a mom, but not a dad.
So on Father's Day, we call our grandfather.
Howdy, boys.
Happy Grandfather's Day! In our family, Father's Day is big. I had to make double the breakfasts and double the presents for my double daddies.
So that gives you a bit of, you know, in terms of range, it depends who you're talking to, at what point of the day you might be talking to them. And I think you can see there that you've got shows like Boo Snoo, which if anyone's ever had a hard day, watch that, because it really soothes, gives you a moment out of whatever you might be feeling. And then you've got a show like Ready, Eddie, Go, which is very much intended, yes, for the autistic community, and we made that with the support of the autistic community, but also to for kids at school who may come across someone in their class who might be stimming, for example, and they might think, oh, what's going on? So that understanding, so it's representation and understanding, so that they can then think, oh, I know what to do, I know what's going on. So we're giving tools in different ways. And then obviously the disability doc is part of our news strand for older children, and we really, really don't shy away from difficult subjects there. We've dealt with death and bullying and knife crime and hate, all of which children come across. We can't protect them from that. So our view is very much sort of give children the words to experience these things and represent people who are impacted, and sort of develop and foster some understanding, and also some, you know, we did a little bit of we always do a lot of research, but one thing that really struck me was children often won't do anything if they see someone suffering because they're worried about doing the wrong thing. And so knowing how to react to someone who needs help and support is a really important thing to demonstrate.
Yeah, really fantastic range and set of strategies there, and with FYI, and to see it so prominent, on Sky News, and also authored and presented by young people.
Absolutely.
Again,
put in the places they're likely to find it. So it is on Sky News, but it's also on Instagram and TikTok. It's in schools. We do assembly packs. We do all of those things so that a conversation can happen around it. And then back to your question, which is an important one about animals versus real people. I don't know anyone that wasn't caught up in the excitement of Peppa's baby sister. It didn't matter that she's a pig. She was going through those emotions. They are real.
I did enjoy Susanna Reid interviewing parents on Kitchen.
Absolutely. I mean, and live action is really hard to find. Drama is really hard to sell internationally. There is a reason that you see more animal animations than live action dramas. And, but does it lessen the impact of the storytelling? Does it lessen the impact of, the legacies that some of these shows have? It doesn't.
No. Yeah. And Steph, actually, you appeared on Sky FYI, right?
Yeah. A couple of weeks ago, I was on the full exam reform campaign with Young Minds, and I just want to say how on it Sky is with. They see something going on, and straight away it's how can we incorporate this, but it's across all channels. So it's really cool to see how it can go onto their main Instagram channels without it didn't even make it on Sky Kids. It went straight onto the Sky main Instagram page, which I didn't even know was happening, which was a welcome surprise for the campaign. But it's about how to get as many eyes. So for us, it's really good as campaigners because these are topics which we need to speak to the policymakers, but at the same time, kids out there are sitting exams right now. How do we support them? And it's about linking all of those together. And I think you were saying about how everyone is different as a kid. And I think the main thing for you guys all in the audience in the media section is kids are smart. So don't underestimate them because they will shut you off if they think that you're trying to sell them a fairy tale. All these things about resilience and storytelling is there are so many fairy tale-esque stories out there, but kids don't believe them, to be honest. So to build that resilience, be a bit honest. Have someone, don't want to sound extreme or anything, but include grief. Include those key moments where people won't know what's going on. Include those moments where, a child is stimming and you don't know how to talk to them. Educate them, but don't shy away from them thinking, we have to keep a storytell going, because kids will literally look at it and go, I'm not really interested because I know you're lying to me. And kids from a very much earlier than you imagine, and probably much earlier than the studies say as well, they see through that. On the point about animals, I think also for any game designers in the room, what we do at Orly, we have avatars. So a child makes their own avatar and then they regulate, we teach them how to regulate emotionally through that avatar itself. And so we'll have a on-screen but also off-screen, so we have a healthy screen time model. How do we include both of these aspects in a way that a child can feel comfortable and grow emotionally? So not only animals, but avatars as well, especially for game designers and animators.
So a really interesting space, and doesn't sound too meta scary.
No,
I know Meta are trying to develop photorealistic avatars and so on, but yours sounds a little bit safe on that. Do you think, Steph, that we co-create enough and work with young people on some of this storytelling? And I suppose Dr. Marta as well, do you think we are psychologists and professionals also engaged enough, do we think? We'll start with young people.
I think that there's a long way for all industries to go. This isn't just media, but I think that there's a long way, just different sections. But there was a company I met yesterday who's based not far from here, Sparky Inc., if I'm not mistaken. They co-create with SEN children, or SEN people, not just children, but game design and all of these things. And it's how do we connect the sector with those organizations which are already doing great things. So, for example, I want to say everyone in the room a challenge of, you're all in the media space. Yesterday there was a question after the keynote about how do we incorporate young voices, how do we give young people voices? And I want to pay tribute to Lily in second row there again, but I know it's happened quite a few times for you, Lily, but how all those people in the media space, which you all are, there are plenty of people out there in pink shirts. Go up to them, speak to them, and ask them, what are you interested in? Game design. Okay, game design. This person, I have a friend who works there. Let's put them in touch. Let's make sure that they are given a week of work experience. And then from that, the person who gives them the work experience should set aside 1 hour in that week and go, this is our workflow. This is how we operate every week. Okay, from that, what are we missing? Where is there no young person, which there should be, and very easily? There are so many organizations, Diana Award, Young Minds, My Life, My Say, so many of these organizations already have youth engagement officers. The systems are all there, safeguarding systems are already in place. Partner with them, bring these people in there, and then you can co-create effectively. You don't have to go and find your own youth engagement space if you don't have the budget for it. Partner with organizations which already have it.
Yeah, good advice, and I think definitely, acknowledge sometimes these spaces. We're here talking about children, but there's not as many children, young people as there needs to be. So, really, really good advice there. I don't know if anyone else wanted to come in on any of those other points, or if maybe we can focus a little bit now on what does exist in terms of good examples that have been you've seen or you created, where actually storytelling really supports children's mental health and resilience. And perhaps Rebecca, do you want to start off?
Yeah, well, I actually wanted to share something that we've created, not just yet, but at Happy Marlowe Studios. As I said before, we're really focusing on conscious content with the view of hiding the spinach, as I call it, so utilising entertainment and experiences, stories and characters, and embedding within those experiences therapeutic tools and resources that kids can get curious about or be invited about to kind of learn as they watch along. So we've been developing animation for 3 to 6 year olds called Marlowe and Friends, which was actually the development was funded by Innovate UK. So when we were talking about kind of partnerships and co-creation, that was a really important piece for us. And it meant that we did hire a neurodiversity specialist, we did hire a child psychologist, we did hire an early years educator, and put all of that specialism around the work that we were creating. And so what we're doing with Marlowe and Friends is introducing young children to the world of emotional freedom technique, which some of you might know of as tapping, or acupuncture without the needles. And it's very much an invitation for them to be curious. Like, our approach isn't instructional. We're going to teach you how to tap. It's more than our characters, our gang of 4 animals, they already know how to tap. And as they're going about their kind of lives and adventures in these 7-minute episodes, when conflict comes along or challenge comes along or any exploration of feelings, then there's an opportunity in each episode for them to tap, and for the kids watching to kind of see what might be going on in their imaginations or thoughts while they're doing so. So I wanted to share a little teaser of what we've done, where our main character, Marlowe, has had a bit of a falling out with the gang and has gone off for a minute to have a think about that.
I can't talk right now. I feel too sad. What's that? Are you tapping? I do that too, to help me feel calm. Shall we do it together? I always start by tapping my hand and telling myself, even though I feel upset, I know it's okay. Even though I couldn't make things better, I know my friends will still be there for me. Even though these feelings are scary, they won't last forever. Now I start tapping on other places. My head, around my eye, around my lip, my chin, my chest. It helps me focus on my feelings and see them in my imagination. Right now, it looks kind of dark and sad. I want these feelings to change, but what can they become? Maybe or maybe they could be I know. Much better. I always feel good after tapping. How do you feel, Frog?
Thank you. So that's just to give an indication of the world, really, and to bring it to life. And again, just in terms of co-creation, earlier this year we went out to 1,000 school children with this and some other materials that we put together for reception in year one to find out, is this resonating? Are they interested? And we had really good feedback, from some lovely feedback from the kids, but importantly from teachers as well, because they're looking for more and more resources that they can use in the classroom or they can signpost to families at home. And so that's how we know that there is a gap for programming or for content, however it gets distributed like this. And it's great to have the opportunity to be part of that.
Thank you for sharing that. And Dr. Marta, just that mention about the world that children live in, it's not just down to media, right? There's a really important role that lots of us can play, perhaps as parents or guardians. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about how you reinforce some of the messages that we might be seeing in media? Yeah.
I think one of the best things to do when children are watching media like this, meaningful. So one, I would say, please choose meaningful media because, I think you guys create incredible media. I'm just going to say that. I'm leaving going, oh my God, I love TV. But I think TV is still created in a way that is really meaningful, that is really beautiful, that has some great stories. But number two is talk to children, right? Co-viewing is so critical. If you want to embed these stories, not just as like something pleasurable and entertaining to watch, which is also okay, by the way. I really believe in giving children entertainment and also like calm watching. That's good. But sometimes, more often than not, with little ones in particular, make sure that you're talking about what you're seeing. Like that would be a beautiful example to sit next to your child and be like, oh, I'm going to tap. I'm going to see how that feels. How does it feel for you? Chat alongside it so that what they're doing is experiencing what they're watching. That is really critical, and it builds skills, it builds emotional regulation, it also builds connection between you and a child. So if you're bringing media like this and hoping to make it educational, remember that it's you that is the educational bit, really, more than just the media. And number two, I'm quite strong about this, so controversial or maybe not, but for me, it's so important that we find media, like I said, that is meaningful, as opposed to things that are just on social media, for example, that might not be as meaningful. I think we need to protect our children as much as we can and delay things like smartphones, where they will just watch very rapid content that might not be meaningful, useful, actually give them anything. What it gives them is distraction, which is also what it gives us, because we do that too, which is why I wrote an entire book about it, because I think it's such an important topic. But for me, it's really important. Like if you go on YouTube or if you go on, loads of apps, like, you know, make sure that you as an adult know what your child is viewing, that you co-watch it sometimes. You're not going to be able to do it all the time, but sometimes, and enough times that you can kind of understand it, and then you can talk about it. And the other thing is, which I say to parents of children who are slightly older, not tiny little ones, but I think we should be talking to our children about what they watch online, in the media, on TV, the same way that we do when they go to the playground or they go to school. We always, as parents, will say things like, who did you play with? What did you do? You know, think about a play date. What kind of questions would you ask your child? Ask them exactly the same. Oh, so you watched, you know, Marlo and Me. What were they doing today? You know, what happened? Because then what you're doing is what I said at the beginning. It's like co-watching, but you're bringing that kind of relational element to the content, and that's what makes it really powerful.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you for that advice. It's really important to ground us in that thinking. I think we're going to come to questions shortly in a minute. So if you do have any, get ready. But just you picked up on that kind of that point around our digital sort of reality, and there are a lot of short form videos, algorithms, doom scrolling. Although I'm not sure really what that means. And would we say that small short stories can they have a big effect for children and young people? You know, we heard, I think, Patricia earlier, you know, BBC Children's Commissioner, talking about how they are increasingly thinking about different platforms to sort of premise and content on and so on. But what is the panel's views on perhaps that sort of digital age and how that might impact short story, you know, resilient storytelling and so on?
But short stories can be 5 minutes, right? And that can still be powerful. There's, you know, things like Hey Dougie's really short, and I mean, I talk about Bluey a lot because I think Bluey, as a parent, I see myself, and then I also see my kids in it. So again, that relatableness. But it's really short. I think they're about 8 minutes long. So I believe you can make really meaningful short content. I do believe in that. And I think there's also content that isn't like thought, like you, all of you, you're thinking about it, you're being reflective about it. There's other kinds of content that aren't thought out, and that's the kind of content that I would safeguard. But I think short stories can be incredibly powerful. You don't need to have 3 hours of Moana, for example, to tell a story. I believe you can make really meaningful media.
And even shorter than like the kind of 5-7 minute episodes. I mean, what we just saw there from Marlo and Friends was 2 minutes, and that is kind of like an excerpt from a 7-minute piece. But it's how we kind of chop up, for want of a better phrase, some of this media and distribute it in different ways so that short bursts can really pack a punch. I think it's just about using your creative so that you engage and you leave the message or the feeling or the impact that you want to set out to do.
Lucy, you do agree with that as well?
Yeah, I think, you know, we have, you know, shorts for us probably means 2 minutes. And then you go into your 5s or your 7s or your 11-minute and then half hours. So we have different stories of different lengths. And we do think really hard about platform. We think about, particularly when it comes to older kids, because older kids are not sitting and watching linear TV. So we try and be creative with what we do and with our budget. So the Disability and Me clip that you saw was part of a 15-minute mini documentary which exists on Sky News, and then we do have it on demand. We don't get many views on demand, actually. The views come from either that live or even more from distributing it to schools, and then we do chop it up as well and put clips out. Obviously they need to be meaningful clips. But for Instagram or TikTok or YouTube, those shorts can be incredibly powerful and really find an audience. So you can create, I think in the last 7 months, we've reached 4.5 million kids with some of that content because we've sent it flying out in so many different ways.
And just, I suppose, what thinking about what's missing, what progress we still need to make. Steph, when I was researching you've talked about that sort of feeling that lots of us maybe, or lots of children have, about perhaps not being seen or supported, in media. Do you think young people do feel seen in today's media? And actually, are there particular types of stories that are absent that you think actually would be game changing for this sort of space of creating and developing resilience?
I think I'm going to go slightly less on children's and go more about young people, so more about what Lucy's been speaking about. So, Lucy, what do you define at Sky by young people when you talk about like FYI, for example?
FY would be sort of 7 to 12-year-olds.
Yeah. And I think those age groups, I go back to my point again, young people are a lot smarter than you think. There's a report which came out yesterday talking about how young people aren't ready for work, yada, 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 same old thing. But well, sadly it is. But the fact that young people, on their phones, they've got so much knowledge and access to knowledge that they are learning a lot quicker than probably a lot of people in this room initially learned when they were that age. So they have been learning a lot more and a lot quicker. So they are really smart. Work with them and find out what they're interested in. For me, I remember towards the end of my young years, which I agree now, I'm 19.
You're still young,
yeah, I'm still young. Sorry, but on that point, like towards the end of my early adolescence, let's say very early adolescence, I was watching First News. I was reading First News. I was watching those real life stories. What Lily was speaking about yesterday with going to BLM protests, and that sort of media I would have loved, and that's what I was loving, and I still do really enjoy those real life things. But it's understanding that not everyone's like me. Not everyone wants to see real life things. So again, it's about variety. I know budgets are tight in every industry. Talk about Alex and I from the charity industry, so we've got different budgets altogether. But
to be resilient at the moment.
Yeah, we have to be resilient, don't we? Yeah. But it's about that thing of add as much variety as you can without being too liquid, effectively, which I think is my takeaway.
Okay, great. Well, let's head to the audience. I think we've got some roving mics. Feels like I'm doing question time here. Just make sure when the mic, when you put your hand up, the mic comes to you before you speak, and do put your hand down. Some people in question time, they still have their hand up when they're saying the question. Well done, Marvin.
Cool. Hi everyone, my name is Melvin.
Melvin, sorry.
I'm a change maker here at the event, and just a little bit of background, and it'll make sense of the question that I asked. I'm the founder of something called the National Youth Technology Council, which is the UK's first youth-led tech for good platform, all about young people shaping and building digital and emerging technology policy, governance and development. Sort of not just campaigning, but actually building the technical solutions to the tech challenges young people are facing in society and pushing for policy off the back of that. And funnily enough, my question is an answer to the question you just asked Stefano, Alex. I think for me, one thing I've observed, and this is a new space for me as a whole, and Lucy, you work at Sky, and I think Dr. Martha and Rebecca, you can sort of jump in on the answer to this question as well. At Sky and across sort of the media sectors, there's been a lot done for young people's content around sort of relevant issues that are happening now, and you touched on that during your work. But why aren't we seeing more media content focused on young people's active and responsible engagement with technology? So I'm talking about things like AI, social media, digital rights, not just safety, but agency and innovation. So you have experts like Dr. Marva who's supporting parents in the digital space, and you have youth initiatives like myself that we're doing. So why wait until things get worse before reflecting these issues in content? And if young people are already being affected, isn't this the moment to tell these stories, not just to warn, but to empower them?
It's a really interesting question. I'm always a bit surprised with like BBC sometimes because newsrounds can shy away from talking about certain platforms because they feel the pressure of like if they talk about it, educators, parents get frustrated because young people aren't meant to be on them, but they are. So it's an interesting question. Who wants to go first with response? Steph, do you want to come in?
Yeah, just I think my only takeaway of this is go back and tell the people who work in adult media to reframe their narratives, because why am I getting a call from the BBC yesterday to add a comment about are young people doing enough? Like, are young people ready for work? Yes, it's right that I'm in that conversation. Like, it's right that a young person is in that conversation, 100%, keep that going. There are plenty of young people who are ready to add comments to these things. I go back to the same organizations, My Life, My Say, Diana, all these organizations are ready to give comment, but why is there's a narrative that young people aren't ready and young people aren't good and young people this, young people that. But if the adult media reshapes that conversation, then we can have meaningful conversations in children's, I think.
I mean, I'll go back to that question of, you know, I do work for Sky. We are a tech company as well as an entertainment company. If we respond to something through FYI, it's necessarily a, you know, current topic. So, but we, you know, we do try and think forward and include as many young people's voices as we can. But a lot of the work we do with young children may be invisible to a lot of the people in the room through things like the digital hubs that we've set up to ensure that kids in socially deprived areas have access to broadband so they can go and do their homework. And we have thousands of kids through Sky and Sky Studios every year who learn how to make news programming. And we have an online classroom resource called The Edit, which supplies a whole suite of digital assets and skills training so that kids learn how to be part of that conversation. So is it going to end up on screen? No, but that commitment to young people is something that really runs through many, many aspects of what Sky does as an organisation.
Okay, I think you're missing my point. My point is that if you can create content where you're raising awareness around how young people can interact with young people who've got autism, why can't you create content around young people, like an animated series around how to operate in the digital world, what your digital rights, all this sort of point. I think it's great you're doing all this stuff, but my point is, this is a massive issue that's only going to get worse in society with the rise of AI and digital and emerging technologies. My point is, if you want to get ahead of the curve, yes, you're doing all these initiatives, but that's not scalable in a sense. That's
so you're
not
talking about a show about
exactly,
how to
creating actual content that's visible
like
to young
digital
people.
literacy,
digital,
but also
but
actually representing the content that young people are experiencing
and
right now.
I think part of the response to that is when I look at spending our budget on a show, with the exception of the news and current affairs that we do, I have to ensure it's got a lifespan of 5 years plus.
This is a 50-year issue.
And yes, but technology and the way kids are interacting with technology is moving so fast. I would be very wary of commissioning something that may be out of date in 6 months' time.
Yeah.
But is young people's digital rights out of date? That's always going to be an issue.
No, of course it's not.
I think it's a good challenge for anyone in this room to pitch. But I think then there has to be I hear what you're saying about, I suppose, about how do you make sure that technology it doesn't get outdated if you focus on particular. But the rights and the principles that you're talking about are absolutely there.
And being a good digital citizen, of course.
That's absolutely,
But I think we would touch on that in...
I mean, I think that content is necessary. Like, that's my view. It's necessary, and I agree with you. It needs to happen now, not in 10 years' time. And actually, my biggest goal would be to embed it within the curriculum. I don't know why we teach kids about sex education not very well, not in my view very well, but we teach them about sex education, but we don't teach them about like digital safety. I mean, my daughter was talking about online safety and scams. She's 6. I'm like, why are you learning about scams? I want her to learn about cyberbullying. I want her to learn about, grooming. I want her to learn about pop-ups. I want her to learn about how are you a good digital citizen online? Like we had this conversation before this, didn't we? How do you respond to comments in a way that is human online? Because the online world is actually a human world. Like we're humans with a screen. It's not robots doing this. So I fully agree and support you. I think it's hard. I don't know. Anyone here with ideas, go for it.
Some of it is about finding those moments that you can use in... I mean, we showed a clip of Let's Go Bananas, fantastic series about, different families, different family makeups. But that's... One of the episodes is around one of the dads who's obsessed with the game, and they're on a day trip, and he's not engaging with his kids because he's actually playing the game. That's the way we would tackle it, because you're learning about, there's how to use that media, but you're doing it as part of an entertainment show rather than this is the show about digital literacy. And that's the way we would tackle it.
I'm going to try and get some more questions in. I suppose with the government here, they talked to us about the computing curriculum, but even the word computing sounds a bit old-fashioned.
I mean, that's so old school.
Don't get me started on a curriculum conversation, mate. We'll be here for hours.
Do we have another question? Yes. Got two over there. And then we'll be wrapping up in the next sort of 7 minutes.
Hi, I'm a writer, and a lot of most kids' content has a lot of humour and a lot of jokes in it. Do you perhaps have any insights or nice examples on how humour can build resilience?
That's a good one.
There's a lot of research coming out of Ukraine. When I was reading up for this talk, there was a lot about resilience, preventing PTSD, and humour, the role of humour in that discussion. That's probably my best start to say, yes, it's good. I don't think that's a really good one. Sorry, that just sort of sparked my interest. I remember reading that article Saturday evening.
There's been some research on, I mean, am I really saying this here? But I am. Kind of morbid humour, helping adults and children move through grief.
Okay.
So we know humour and laughter can be really healing, can be really supportive to move through like something. But I would say if we think about just kids kind of TV, or I know you said examples, an example would be making a mistake and laughing about it, you know, but not in a way that's mocking, right? So that's the nuance. It's not about mocking or teasing. It's about going, oh my God, I made a mistake and that's okay, and like turning it into a joke. Or for example, one of the things that I do therapeutically would be, feel free to use this, when children sometimes get really stuck on nightmares. So they've had a nightmare, and we always wake up where the fear is greatest, right? And the power of storytelling and the power of like using stories is that you can help a child either draw the picture, which is what I would tell them to do. Let's draw the picture. Let's really talk about this monster or this awful thing in your dream. And now let's carry on the story. And we always use humor. So, you know, imagine there's a big, horrible monster who's really scary. He's approaching the kid and suddenly splat, you throw cake at it or something, you know? So, and then the kid's laughing. And then I'm like, this is the story before you go to bed that you're going to remember, right? This is what you're going to read through. This is what you're going to remember, the picture. And that's resilience, right? I'm going to go to bed and I'm no longer scared of falling asleep because I know what I'm going to do with this monster and it's not that scary. So that's how I would use humour.
Thank you. We'll all sleep easy tonight. I think, did you want to add anything, or should we get this last question in? Yeah? Let's go for that. And also, very interesting point about sort of dark humour. I think us Brits like to think we're very good at that, and certainly my American cousins don't always get my dark humour. Yes.
I wasn't sure whether to ask this question, as I think it may be a silly one.
No silly question, yeah. It's fine.
We love a bit of humour.
So I am here because I work in the media industry, but this question is actually coming from the fact that I'm a dad. You know, I've got an 8-year-old and a 5-year-old, and we are coming to that time, aren't we, where it's sort of delaying the smartphone, and which I'm hearing more and more about that, and I'm very much behind that. But my kids watch lots of TV, and as a dad, I'm always aware of, you know, how much TV is too much TV. And I just wanted to put out there a little bit and just see what opinions there are around that. You know, is there too much TV that a child can consume? Is it different for different children? What are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, and I think this is really interesting because I remember when we were right at the start of the online safety bill, there was the chief medical officers were asked to do a bit of analysis into actually how much screen time is too much. And the answer was there wasn't really an answer, and it depends on the type of content, the quality, you know, how you're interspersing it with those reflections, discussions. So I'm going to just preempt that, but let's see if there's any more.
Spot on, Alex. I love that.
Yeah.
I feel like the question is to me, but please do chip in. The thing I always say is not all screens are created equal. I work on a computer. I don't know, most of you maybe go behind the, you know, the cameras, but I'm always on a screen. I'm on a screen most of the time. My brain is not rotting. I'm writing, I'm thinking, I'm, you know, having video calls. Right, screens are helpful to us. So that's what I would say first and foremost. We should not be scared of screens because that's not helpful to anybody. Technology helps us. I mean, I've written a book. I said that before. I'm not saying that for no reason. But, you know, if I'd had to write it by hand and edit it by hand, it would have taken me years, right? So let's just own that. Secondly, there is no such thing as too much or too little, okay? And there is a difference. Some kids might need more, some kids need less. So some kids who are neurodivergent actually may benefit from watching meaningful content. Meaningful, slow content is what I'm going to say. It actually soothes them, okay? And it brings familiarity. So when they're in a restaurant, when they're on holiday, they might feel really distressed. And this is why I feel like the judgment between parents, like we need to work on that. Because if you see a family using screens at the table, don't judge them. Get curious. You don't know why they're using them. Maybe they do want a quiet meal, and that's okay. Maybe this is their first quiet meal in like 3 months. Give them a break. But 2, you don't know if that kid is actually freaking out because the food is different, because there's smells, because there's people. Actually, headphones, focusing on one of your beautiful shows, and then they carry on eating and everyone's happy, right? So there's that. 2, the way I think about it is about opportunity. So what are they losing out on when they're watching TV? What are they gaining and what are they missing out on? I mean, I don't think most parents, honestly, put their kids from the morning they wake up till bedtime in front of a TV. The TV is not a babysitter, like I would say that quite loudly. But also, when I'm cooking dinner, I've got an 2-year-old. She's not 18 months. I want her to be, but she's not. And a 6-year-old. And sometimes they play beautifully, and sometimes they do not. And if I'm by myself cooking dinner, I might be like, I'm going to give you half an hour of quiet time. Watch something I trust, and I'm going to carry on cooking you a meal. That doesn't make me a bad parent or a lazy parent, or, you know, that makes me an effective parent who's using TV the way it should be used. They have a great time. They're not missing on any opportunity because I can't play with them right now. And then they get a lovely meal. And so I always say to parents, think about these 4 things. Are screens interrupting your family life? Do they get in the way? You know, think about it. Is your child missing on opportunities, relationships, or, you know, experiences or skills building because of screens? If you're like, they don't write, you know, they can't hold a pencil, but they can swipe, we need to think about, you know, what do they need? But, you know, it's about balance, and good TV is important.
I really like that. I think, you know, sometimes we focus too much on the tech or the device and not think about all those other things, sleep, relationships, and so on. Steph, did you want to add one final thing, or anyone else from the...
I'd love to. I think I agree with Marta a lot more than I thought I would.
That's nice.
No, it's lovely. I love agreeing with people in this conversation because I normally don't. What are they looking at on those screens, and how are you engaging those conversations? Are you practicing that good relationship which Marta was talking about earlier of how, like, you go on a walk and talk, and as you're walking, you ask them, oh, so what have you been looking at? How have you been finding it? And then if they feel a bit like confrontational about it, recognize that, but don't go, oh, for God's sake, not confrontation again. Be plain to it and realize, okay, maybe we'll talk about this tomorrow, or make time for those conversations, but realize that in that moment, they will feel like you're confronting them, even if you're not trying to, because we're kids. That's how we react to a lot of situations, because they're scary. Those conversations, we feel like it's about to be taken away from us. But also, I could talk about this for hours, but are they finding purpose on that screen? So we spoke about SEN kids, but we're also thinking about members of the LGBTQ+ community. They find a lot of safety on those screens. So what's the purpose? Are they finding out about entrepreneurship, which you don't learn in schools because, again, the curriculum? Are they learning about these key things which they might really enjoy? Even they might learn about finance on screens. But what are they looking at? What are they developing? Because don't think it's all bad. But yes, listen to what they're... Exactly. And especially at younger ages. Be careful about it. But yeah.
Great. Well, I just have to thank the panel. Thank you very much for that discussion. Really enjoyed it. Steph, you mentioned finance. Well, I've got to tell you that if you're doing the tax certification speed meeting, then all BFI, that starts in half an hour over at the workstation. These are sponsored by A Productions this year. Tea and coffee is available in the showroom bar and the hubs, and it's sponsored by Omen Studios. And coming up here next in Cinema 2 is Shaking Up UK Independent Family and Children's Film at 3:30 p.m. Thank you very much for joining us today. We've really enjoyed it. And we'll be out in the foyer if you've got any further questions. Hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.